What happens when the CEO of a cafe chain goes undercover and ends up refilling the coffee counter only to freeze mid-step, as a barista breaks down crying over rent she can't afford. Elias Stanton stood in the back of his town car, staring through the tinted window at the street-facing store marked Location 3. It was one of 6 cafes he'd bought 5 years ago from a retiring couple who ran them like old-school diners. He'd scaled it up, new branding, new menu, new tech, but lately, something felt off. The numbers looked decent on paper, but customer reviews were slipping, staff turnover was too high, and the district manager's updates felt too polished. He needed to see it himself. So for the first time in years, Elias put away the tailored suits. He shaved his beard, dyed his hair a shade darker, and wore a branded polo with a fake name tag. Illy new hire. He'd never met the staff at this location. It was just one of the 6, and turnover had wiped any record of the original crew. No one would recognize him. A few minutes later, he walked through the side door of the cafe and stepped into a mess. The floor behind the counter was sticky. A shipment of oat milk sat unopened by the register. The line at the front was 6 customers deep, with only one barista working her movements fast but stressed. "Hey, Illy," a gruff voice called from the back. A tall man with a clipboard walked out, chewing gum with zero urgency. "You're the new guy today, right? I'm Brent. Just shadow the barista till your paperwork clears. Try not to slow her down." Elias nodded, watching Brent disappear into the back again. No guidance, no welcome. He turned to the barista. She was mid-pour, her dark curls pinned up, beads of sweat on her neck. "You ever used an espresso machine?" she asked without glancing at him. "Yeah, I've got some experience," Elias said, stepping beside her. "Then grab a rag and clean the counter. We're drowning." He did. Wordlessly, he wiped down the sticky espresso station, refilled syrups, and restocked cups. He watched her work fast, precise, polite even when people snapped at her. She called out names with a smile. But between orders, her hands trembled slightly. "Break in 10, he asked softly. She shook her head. "Haven't had one since opening. Brent said we're short today." Elias glanced around. No one else was working the floor. "Where's the rest of the crew?" 2 people quit this week. One got written up for being 5 minutes late and walked out. The other just stopped showing up. All while Brent stayed comfortably in the back, they pushed through another rush. Around noon, the line finally slowed. Elias was refilling the coffee urns when he heard a quiet sound behind him. He turned. The barista, he hadn't caught her name, was crouched behind the counter, her head in her hands. Her shoulders shook. He hesitated, then knelt beside her. "Hey," he said gently. "You okay?" She looked up, eyes red. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I just got this call during that last order. My landlord's raising my rent. I already work 6 days a week. I can't do more." Elias froze, still holding the coffee carafe. The words hit harder than he expected. She wasn't just tired, she was breaking. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Emery," she said. "Emery Grant." He sat down beside her and nodded. "I'm Ellie. First day, remember?" She let out a weak laugh. "Welcome to the dream," Brent's voice called from the back. "Emery, where's that cappuccino?" She wiped her eyes and stood up. "Back to it," she muttered. Elias stood too, but his mind was racing. Rent, overworked, staff quitting, a manager who stayed hidden and barked orders. He spent the rest of the shift watching everything: how Brent only showed up to criticize, how Emery carried the entire cafe alone, how customers got frustrated because no one helped her. When they closed, Emery stayed to clean. Brent left early. Elias helped her mop, then walked out into the night, his stomach tight. 6 stores, 5 more to check. But this one needed fixing now, and Emery? She deserved more than a pat on the back and a free coffee. She deserved someone to finally show up. The next morning, Elias arrived just before opening. The air smelled faintly of burnt toast and industrial cleaner. He entered through the side again, same polo, same name tag. The lights buzzed overhead as he walked past the prep sink and into the back room. No one said a word. Brent sat on an overturned crate, scrolling on his phone with a half-eaten breakfast sandwich in hand. A stack of order guides sat untouched beside him. Elias paused. "You want me to start on prep?" he asked. Brent didn't look up. "Emery's already got it. You can stock the pastry case. Just don't mess up the labeling. We had a vegan freakout last week." That was all the direction he gave. Elias turned to the fridge, pulled trays of scones and muffins, and began. His hands moved automatically, but his mind was elsewhere. He'd spent most of the night reviewing files. Emery had been with the company for nearly 2 years. Never late, no write-ups, 3 raises, all minor. Her evaluations were glowing until 6 months ago. That's when Brent was assigned to this location. Elias glanced through the service window. Emery was already at the espresso machine, tying her apron, her posture tight. She didn't speak. She just worked. By mid-morning, the line stretched halfway to the door. Brent still hadn't stepped out from the back. Elias helped Emery as best he could, pulling shots, wiping counters, grabbing backup syrups from below. "Hey," she said between orders, "you're better at this than most new hires." "I used to run a shop," Elias replied, adjusting a lid on a to-go cup. "Long time ago." She didn't press. She barely had time to breathe. Around 10, a man in a blue delivery uniform came through the front. He waited patiently, then asked to speak with a manager. Emery glanced toward the back, then looked at Elias. "You want to grab him?" Elias nodded. He walked into the back room. "Brent," he said evenly. Brent didn't look up. "Tell him to leave it by the sink. He has documents that need verifying." Brent sighed, slapped his phone on the crate, and stood. "Can't they just put it on the clipboard like normal?" Elias didn't respond. He followed him out. At the counter, the delivery man handed over a small envelope. Brent signed without reading, then turned to Emery. "You double-counted the oat milk again," he said flatly. "We're supposed to track waste, not bury it." Emery didn't flinch. "I used what was already open." "The new one's still sealed in the fridge." Brent rolled his eyes. "Then maybe learn to write it down. I don't have time to babysit inventory." The delivery man shifted uncomfortably. Elias caught his eye, nodded slightly, and the man quickly turned and left. Brent walked back to the office without another word. Elias stepped beside Emery. "You okay?" She nodded once. "He does that in front of people on purpose." "You talk to anyone about it?" She shook her head. "I tried once to HR. They said they'd look into it. 2 weeks later I got a warning for attitude. I keep my head down now." Elias didn't reply. He just kept working. Later, during a lull, a tall woman with a clipboard and a tense jaw walked in. She wore the company's regional badge, district services coordinator. "Brent here?" she asked curtly. Emery pointed wordlessly to the back. The woman turned to Elias. "You're new. 2 days. "Good luck," she muttered, then disappeared into the back. Emery leaned in. "That's Marcy. She shows up every few weeks. They usually talk for 5 minutes, then she leaves." Elias nodded once. "You ever seen her behind the bar?" "No." Less than 10 minutes later, Marcy exited, heels clicking. She didn't make eye contact with anyone. Brent followed her out, offering a loud laugh at something she'd said. Then he returned to the back, alone again. Elias continued restocking cups. By noon, the cafe was packed. A group of teenagers spilled into the corner booth, backpack zippers clinking. An older man sat near the window, sipping slowly, watching the crowd. A woman with a stroller struggled to balance her coffee while calming her child. The rhythm was constant. Emery never stopped moving. A customer approached, middle-aged, sharp brown coat, sunglasses despite the overcast sky. He tapped the counter with one finger. "I said soy milk." "This tastes like almond." Emery took the cup gently. "Let me fix that for you." He didn't move. "You people can never get it right. I say one thing, you do something else." Elias stepped forward. "I'll remake that, no charge." The man turned to him. "And who are you?" "Just helping." The man scoffed. "Figures. One of you messes up, the other covers. This place is a joke." Emery handed over a fresh drink. "Here you go, sir. Have a good day." He took it and walked off, muttering something under his breath. After he left, she exhaled slowly. "That guy comes in twice a week, never smiles, always finds something to hate." Elias kept his voice even. "You ever get backed up because of him?" "Once." Brent told me to ignore complaints unless they're over $5. Elias paused. He said that directly? Yeah. Said it's not worth the time unless they're real customers, whatever that means. The next hour passed in a blur. The espresso machine jammed. A kid knocked over a tray of napkins. A woman spilled her drink near the condiment station. Elias and Emery moved in sync, managing it all. At 2, the rush ended. Emery finally leaned back against the back counter. "Can I take 5?" she asked. Brent's voice rang from the back. "Not till closeout's done." Elias turned. "She's been on since 6. Brent appeared in the doorway. "She can take 5 when we're not bleeding money." Emery said nothing. She grabbed a rag and began wiping down the pastry case. Elias stared at Brent. "You ever jump in to help?" Brent gave a short laugh. "I'm not here to babysit baristas. My job's to make sure the place runs, not hold hands." Elias walked toward him. "And you think it's running?" Brent crossed his arms. "We're profitable." "At what cost?" Brent's eyes narrowed. "Listen, new guy, you've been here 2 days. Don't act like you know how this place works." Elias stepped closer. "You're right, I don't know everything yet, but I know what burnout looks like, and I know what it feels like to be treated like you're disposable." Brent scoffed. "If Emery can't handle the heat, maybe she should find somewhere else." That did it. Elias's voice dropped. "You're done." Brent blinked. "What?" I said. "You're done. Go clean out your things." "You don't have the authority to." Elias pulled the name tag off his shirt and dropped it on the counter. "My name is Elias Stanton. I own this company." Silence. Emery turned, her eyes locked on him. Brent's face drained of color. Elias didn't raise his voice. "You've been using intimidation to mask your own incompetence. You've created a hostile environment, ignored safety protocols, and demeaned employees in front of customers. That ends today." Brent opened his mouth, closed it, then stormed to the back. Elias turned to Emery. "You're taking a break." Now she stared at him, stunned. "You're the CEO." "I am." She didn't move. "Go," he said gently. "I'll cover." She slowly untied her apron and stepped out into the alley behind the cafe. Elias turned back to the counter. A customer approached. He smiled. "What can I get started for you?" The cafe felt different already. But the work was just beginning. Elias stepped into the back office, the air thick with the scent of reheated food and stale coffee grounds. Brent stood rigid by the metal filing cabinet, yanking open drawers like he was trying to find something to hold on to. "You're seriously firing me?" he asked, voice low but tight. Elias didn't respond immediately. He watched Brent shove a few notebooks and a tablet into a duffel bag that had been left slumped in the corner. "This isn't a performance issue," Elias said. "It's a leadership failure. You had the authority to protect your team. Instead, you treated them like they were beneath you. That's not something we correct with a warning." Brent zipped the bag and turned. "You think you know what it's like here? One person calls out and you're underwater. Corporate cuts hours and I'm the one who gets blamed when things fall apart." Elias kept his tone level. "I've made mistakes in how we scaled. I own that. But you had choices. You could have stepped up. You chose to hide instead." Brent slung the bag over his shoulder, eyes darting toward the exit. "You'll regret this. You start firing managers for being blunt, you'll have no one left." Elias reached for the door and held it open. "Then I'll build a team that doesn't need to tear people down to keep control." Brent brushed past him and left without another word. Elias waited until the door clicked shut, then exhaled and turned back toward the cafe. Emery was just stepping inside from the alley, her expression cautious, like she wasn't sure if she'd imagined the last hour. He walked over and handed her a folded apron from the clean stack. "You're not covering anyone else's mistakes today," he said. "We'll rotate the floor. I'll take register for the next stretch." She blinked. "You're staying?" "For now." She nodded slowly and tied the apron behind her back, her hands still slightly unsteady. "There's a lot that needs fixing," she said. "I know," Elias replied. "We'll start with what's in front of us." For the rest of the afternoon, they split the workload. Emery handled drinks with practiced rhythm while Elias managed orders and restocks, learning the flow of the store minute by minute. There were still moments of tension. A customer spilled a latte and snapped when towels didn't appear fast enough. A printer jammed and delayed 6 mobile orders, but without Brent's absence looming, the atmosphere shifted. Around 4, the bell above the door jingled and a tall man in a navy windbreaker entered. He walked with purpose, his eyes scanning the room before landing on Elias. "You the floor lead?" he asked. Elias nodded. "For today," the man pulled out a notepad. "Health and safety, spot check. We had a report filed anonymously last week about expired dairy being used." Emery stopped mid-pour, her hands tightening slightly around the milk jug. Elias gestured toward the prep area. "You're welcome to inspect anything you need. I'll walk you through our logs." The inspector followed him into the back, flipping through his notes. "We've had a few stores flagged recently, short-staffed locations cutting corners on storage temps or cycle rotation." Elias opened the fridge. "We've had management issues here. That's changing now." They moved through the check methodically. Temperatures were recorded properly, though inconsistently. Some labels were missing. One half-used milk carton had no date noted. The inspector made a few marks. "Not enough to issue a fine, but it's close. You'll get a notice to correct. If we're back in 2 weeks and it's not fixed, it escalates." "Understood," Elias said. "This is on me. It won't happen again." The man gave him a brief nod and left without further comment. When Elias returned to the front, Emery was ringing up a woman with 2 kids. She glanced at him but said nothing. Later, after the cafe emptied out again, she asked, "You think the last guy left that complaint?" Elias shrugged. "Doesn't matter. It was valid." She leaned against the counter, exhaustion hanging off her shoulders. "You're the first one who didn't try to explain it away." He looked her in the eye. "We don't fix problems by pretending they don't exist." The door opened again, and this time, 2 employees walked in together, one in ripped jeans, the other wearing a delivery apron beneath a hoodie. Elias recognized them from the personnel files he'd reviewed the night before: Jordan and Lexi. Both had quit earlier that week. They paused when they saw him behind the counter. Emery called out, "They used to work mornings." Elias stepped forward. "You coming back to pick up checks?" Jordan crossed his arms. "We heard Brent's gone." Lexi added, "Word travels fast." "We wanted to see for ourselves." Elias nodded. "He's gone, and things are changing. Not overnight, there's still too much on one person, but we're building it right." Jordan raised an eyebrow. "You hiring again?" "Yes," Elias said. "But I won't ask anyone to return unless they want to." Lexi looked at Emery. "How bad has it been since we left?" Emery hesitated. "It's been hard, but not hopeless." Jordan glanced at Elias. "If you're really serious, we'll do a trial week. But we're not carrying anyone else's weight." "You won't have to," Elias said. They nodded and left, the door shutting quietly behind them. By evening, the cafe had settled into a strange calm. The last customer left just after 6. Emery wiped down the espresso machine, her face drawn but focused. Elias sat at the register, entering notes into a company-issued tablet. "Can I ask something?" Emery said, not looking up. He closed the tablet. "Sure. When you're done fixing this place, are you walking away again?" He considered that. "I didn't plan to stay involved at this level, but I see now that distance creates blind spots." She turned, drying her hands on her apron. "I don't need a hero. I just need someone who doesn't disappear." He nodded slowly. "Then I'll stay visible, that's a promise." She gave a tired half-smile. "We'll see." After close-out, she gathered her things in silence, then paused at the door. "I've got a second job, overnight shift at a warehouse 2 days a week. If I'm slow in the morning, that's why." Elias stood. "We'll find a way to lighten that load, but thanks for saying it." She nodded once and left. Alone now, Elias sat on a stool behind the counter, the hum of the fridge the only sound. He stared at the register, then scanned the empty cafe. The past 2 days had exposed more than bad management. They'd revealed a company stretched too thin, a culture that rewarded silence, and a structure that let problems fester. He pulled out his phone and opened the contact sheet. One by one, he scheduled meetings with every store manager. Then he opened a blank email and began drafting a company-wide policy update, one that would mandate regular site visits, anonymous staff feedback channels, and stricter oversight on day-to-day operations. No more hiding behind numbers. No more managers who led from the backroom. And no more employees forced to whisper their breaking points behind a counter. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. 3 weeks later, the corner cafe had changed, but not in the way most companies would plaster across a press release. There were no balloons, no grand reopenings, no pre-scripted testimonials. Just quieter shifts, steadier hands, and a staff that no longer braced for verbal jabs from their own manager. Elias returned again. No name tag this time, no cover story. He pushed the door open just before the morning rush, his coat dusted with drizzle. Emery was at the bar, tying the back of her apron with a tight, practiced knot. Jordan and Lexi were both behind the counter, quietly prepping syrups and brewing the first round of drip pots. Lexi glanced up briefly, gave a nod, then went back to restocking lids. "Thought you were only visiting stores this week," Emery said without pausing. "I moved my schedule," Elias replied, setting his bag down behind the counter. "Still a few things I want to see for myself." No one objected. The cafe wasn't perfect. The paint on the back wall still peeled slightly above the sink, and the light above the pastry case flickered when the espresso machine ran. But the rhythm had returned, if not to normal, then to something approaching manageable. With Brent gone, the mood had shifted from brittle to focused. Tasks no longer came with a side of sarcasm. Orders were late sometimes, yes, but no one was getting snapped at when they were. Elias stepped to the side, letting Lexi finish her inventory count. "How's the early shift working out?" he asked. She shrugged. "Better. I'm not dodging attitude every time I ask a question." Jordan slid a tray of baked goods into the display and added, "Still short 2 people though." "We've been covering, but it's tight." "I've got interviews happening this week," Elias said. "We're being careful this time, not just hiring warm bodies." Lexi didn't look up. "About time." A small group of customers began trickling in. Emery moved to the register while Jordan took over bar. Lexi stayed on restock. Elias stepped back and observed from near the side counter, watching how they moved in parallel, not always in sync, but no longer clashing. No one raised their voice. No one disappeared into the back. Later, when the morning rush thinned, Elias pulled Emery aside briefly by the utility sink, where the hum of the fridge masked their voices. "I've been reviewing your pay history," he said, "and your hours." She wiped her hands on a towel. "I figured. You're getting a raise starting this week. Retroactive to the beginning of the month. You're also getting hazard pay for the last quarter. I should have caught the overtime pattern sooner." Her expression didn't change. "That won't fix everything?" "I know," Elias said, "but it's a start." "You still doing the warehouse job?" he asked. "Some nights," she replied. "Until I know this is stable." He didn't argue. "Let me know when you're ready to step back from it. I want to offer you a lead role here, not just in title. You'd help shape how we train new hires, how we onboard managers." "You've earned that." She looked at him carefully, not suspicious but cautious. "You offering that because you feel bad? Or because it'll make a good story?" "If I wanted a good story, I wouldn't be standing next to a leaking sink while you tell me I'm not off the hook." That made her smile, but only slightly. "I'll think about it," she said. "Take your time," Elias replied. "But if you say yes, I want your input on every new hire. This place holds together because of who's behind the counter." A few hours later, a new face walked in, a tall woman in a navy shirt with a clipboard under her arm. Not Marcy, the district coordinator who used to breeze through with nothing but surface checks. This one introduced herself clearly. Angela Domingo, corporate training and compliance. Elias had hired her 2 weeks ago to replace the entire oversight structure. "I'm not here for reports," she said to the team. I'm here to listen. You'll see me once a month minimum. I'll rotate locations. I won't be hiding in the back. Jordan raised an eyebrow. You just shadowing, training, and documenting, but mostly making sure you're not getting ignored. Elias stepped aside, letting her walk the floor. She asked real questions not just about procedures, but about how people were treated. She noticed the flickering light, the lack of a working breakroom clock, the chairs with uneven legs. She wrote them down. She didn't interrupt the workflow. When she finished, she handed Elias a folded note. I'll have a full report by Monday, but off the record, you've got good people here. Don't let policies get in the way of treating them like it. He nodded, pocketing the note. After she left, the team returned to their stations. Emery tapped the espresso machine once, then turned to Elias. Does she report to you? She reports to no one but the board, Elias said. That was the agreement. Emery gave a short nod. Then maybe we've got a shot. That evening, as the last tray of pastries was tossed and the cash drawer counted, Elias gathered the team. I won't always be here, he said, but I'll stay connected. You'll see me in stores, not with a clipboard. With sleeves rolled up, Lexi leaned against the fridge. You going undercover again? Not unless I forget how to make a cappuccino, he said. Jordan asked, what about the other locations? They're getting the same audit, same changes. But this one is where I learned what I'd been missing. No one clapped. No one made speeches. It wasn't that kind of team. Instead, Emery handed him a rag and pointed to the floor near the sink. Clean that before you get sentimental, she said. Elias crouched, wiping the tile, while Lexi turned off the music and Jordan flipped the chairs. They moved like people who were still tired, still stretched, but no longer alone in it. Later, as the door locked behind them and the streetlights blinked on, Elias stood outside the cafe and looked back through the glass. It wasn't immaculate. It wasn't easy, but it was honest, and that was enough for now.